Good morning and welcome to Begin in the Word. Our text today comes from Proverbs, the 30th chapter, verse 15 through 16. The leech has two daughters, give and give. Three things are never satisfied, four never say enough. Sheol, the barren womb, the land never satisfied with water, and the fire that never says enough. We're working through the book of Proverbs, chapter 30. This chapter was written by a man named Agur, who was likely a post-exile rabbi. Agur claims himself to be a simple man. However, the reading of our section today demonstrates that he was a very intelligent and brilliant man. This particular proverb today is just fascinating. Agur is attempting to write proverbs that first place us in relationship to God, where we stand before God, and then help us understand various commandments from the Old Covenant. Today's commandment has to do with covetousness. Exodus chapter 20, verse 17, you shall not covet your neighbor's house. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife or his male servant or his female servant or his ox or his donkey or anything that is your neighbor's. And this is a law given to us in the Old Covenant. And like so many things, this is a collection of data. It's information that must be understood, but in order to understand it, one must have the insight and wisdom to put the pieces together, and that's what's happening here. Now, in the case of today's proverb, it's a proverbial teaching on the insatiability and on contentment, and therefore it's reflecting on the concept of covetousness. And this particular proverb really does a great job of giving us insight and wisdom into the problem of covetousness and how it's a never-ending yearning it can be if we don't get it under control. Okay, now to the proverb itself. Again, this proverb is just fascinating. It is a numeric proverb, is easy to see when you read the text. It's thematic. Even though it's a little bit hard to quantify what the theme is, it has to do with insatiability, the inability to satisfy or to say it's enough. But the way it achieves it is what's so interesting. It reaches a climax. Let me demonstrate. The text itself isn't laid out in the logic you might expect based on the numeric strategy of it. However, the way it ends with the word never says enough tells you what's going on. Essentially, it is a collection of three numeric proverbs. The first one is two things. This leech has two daughters. Each of them are named give and give. Then there's a list of three things that are never satisfied: the grave, the womb, and the dry earth. And then there are a list of four things: the grave, the barren womb, the dry earth, and fire. And the way this is laid out, what it's indicating to us is that this is a problem that never stops growing. If you think about it, first it's a list of two things, then it's a list of three things, then it's a list of four things, and that list ends with the phrase never enough, which insinuates that next is a list of five things, and a list of six things, and a list of seven things, and you see why the idea is that there's a climax here. And the climax is this, that as you begin to talk about things that can never be satisfied, well, you can never stop making a list either. That list would grow and grow and grow. And it's in studying this proverb that I conclude that Agur was not a simple man. He was not, as he calls himself, a stupid man. He was a brilliant man, an inspired man who is writing one of the most beautiful proverbs that can be found. It is incredible what he is giving to us and helping us understand the nature of covetousness and how there is no end to the satisfying of our demands sometimes. Okay, let's walk through each of these. The first one, he says, there's this leech. And this leech has two daughters, and the names of those daughters are give and give. Now, if you're not familiar with this particular type of leech, let me take a moment to describe it. A leech is an animal typically found in tropical climates, and this particular leech has two suction portals, one on each end. And with these suction portals, they attach themselves to an animal, human being or whatever, and they begin to suck blood out of the animal, and they suck blood through two ports or through two mouths. And in time, they can kill something if they're on there long enough. And they certainly can make you sick. It's a disgusting animal. And what the proverb is essentially saying is this leech has two daughters, and their names are give and give. In other words, the demand of this leech is such that it has to have two mouths in order to get its fill of blood. And this is similar to what's taught in Ecclesiastes 5 and 10. He who loves money will not be satisfied with money, nor he who loves wealth with his income. This is also vanity. It is never enough. It just goes on and on and on and on. And it's sometimes difficult to understand exactly where this proverb might apply, but it's one of those things that you'll walk along in life one day and you'll say, okay, it's time to quote this proverb. The leech has two daughters, give and give, and they can never be satisfied. It's never enough. Covetousness can be like a blood-sucking leech. We fill it, we attempt to satisfy it, we attempt to meet the need, and it's never enough. I need another phone. I need another house. I need another car. I need a raise. I need better meals. I need this. I need that. I need more clothes. The leech has two daughters, give and give, and they never stop sucking blood. The next list of three things is repeated in the list of three things and the list of four things, so we'll go through them in the list of three things. First, the grave is never satisfied. Proverbs 27 and 20 gives the same teaching. Sheol and Abaddon are never satisfied, and never satisfied are the eyes of man. We bury loved ones. We go to the cemetery again and again and again, and we have since the beginning of time, and it never stops. We go to the cemetery and we look at the endless rows of tombstones, and it never stops. Nothing can seem to put an end to it. The grave is never satisfied. It's never enough. The barren womb is never satisfied. Genesis 30, verse 1, Rachel saw that she bore Jacob no children. She envied her sister. She said to Jacob, give me children or I shall die. And Rachel understood that there was a yearning within her to have children, and she told Jacob, I've got to have children. No one understands this more than the woman who is elderly, sitting by the window, watching for someone to come see her that will never come. She's never had children. She has no family, and now she's left alone. This is a harsh and hard image, but it goes to exactly what Agur's point is. It's a yearning that can never be satisfied if there are no children. And it's the same with covetousness. There is no bottom to this barrel. The third thing listed in this list is the dry earth. David alludes to this in his Psalms, chapter 63, verse 1, a psalm of David when he was in the wilderness of Judah. O God, you are my God. Earnestly I seek for you, my soul thirsts for you, my flesh faints for you, as in a dry and weary land where there is no water. The earth, you put water on it, and it's still dry. And you put more water on it, and it's still dry. And it rains, and it's still dry. And there's never enough water. Next year, there'll need to be more water. Next week, there'll need to be more water. The next time you plant a garden, it'll need more water. The next time you plant a crop, it will need more water. It's never enough. Never stops needing. This is the way of covetousness. There's never an end to it. Our desire is never filled. It keeps going and going and going. Now, these three things are repeated. They're not repeated in the structure. It's inferred that they're in the list of four. But in this list of four, the last item is given to us is a statement of it's never enough. In other words, you could just go on and on and on, adding things to this list. And it brings to mind Christ's statement in Mark 9, verse 48, where speaking of Hades, or Gehenna, rather, Mark 9:48, where their worm does not die and the fire is not quenched. That's the thing about fire. It's never enough. It never reaches its conclusion. It always demands more fuel and more fuel and more fuel, and there is no end to it. Thus is the same with covetousness. There is no end to it. So what do we make of this text? There is an emptiness in man that is insatiable. This emptiness that we attempt to fill with things. And that's why one of the 10 commandments that God gave Israel was to watch out for covetousness. Because if you attempt to fill the void within with covetousness, with more things, there's no end to it. There's no stopping it. This appetite will never be satisfied. The leech will continue to have 2 daughters that cry, give and give. The grave will continue to be empty, needing to be filled. The earth will continue to need more water. The fire will continue to need more fuel. This emptiness in man cannot be satisfied with things. Indeed, covetousness is a vicious cycle that feeds on itself. The more I get, the more I want. No, this, even though it's not mentioned specifically in this proverb, Agur, by giving us these visual images, is helping us understand that true satisfaction can only come with contentment in the Lord. That when we find our emptiness filled with the provisions that God gives and find contentment in that, then the 2 daughters of the leech go away. The grave is satisfied. The dry land becomes irrigated. The fire is put out. The grave no longer demands its fill. Hope you've enjoyed this study today. It is a fascinating proverb. Hope today, as you have begun today in the Word of God, you will live out today in the Word of God.
Thanks for joining us today on Begin in the Word. If this video has been a blessing for you, we invite you to like, comment, or subscribe.